One text message. That's all it took to bring my 10-year marriage crashing down like a house of cards. I think we should take a break. I'm not coming on the anniversary trip. No, I'm sorry. No explanation, just that. After planning the whole trip myself, every detail, every dinner reservation, every surprise, he decided he wasn't going. But that wasn't even the worst part. He wasn't just skipping out on a vacation. He was walking away from our life. I sat frozen in the middle of our neatly made bedroom, still holding the small envelope I'd placed under his pillow that morning. Inside was a handwritten note and 2 tickets to the private wine tasting tour in Napa Valley he'd always talked about. I'd booked it months in advance. I thought it would be the perfect way to celebrate our 10th anniversary. Instead, I was reading his cowardly exit message like a punch to the chest. At first, I thought it was a joke. A twisted, stupid joke. I stared at the screen for a full 5 minutes before calling him. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. By the time I heard the garage door open that evening, my heart was a war drum in my chest. He walked in like nothing was wrong, tossing his keys into the dish by the door, loosening his tie. "I got your message," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me with tired eyes, the kind of look you give a barista who got your coffee order wrong, not your wife, not your partner of 10 years. "I meant what I said," he shrugged, avoiding my gaze as he kicked off his shoes. "Just like that?" I asked. "You're leaving me? Right before our anniversary?" He sighed as if I were being unreasonable. "I don't want to fight. I think this is what's best for both of us." The rage boiled up before I even understood it. Best for both of us? Or best for you? That's when he finally met my eyes. And I saw it. The guilt. The fear. But most of all, the selfishness. He wasn't confused. He wasn't heartbroken. He was already gone. "I've met someone," he said flatly. There it was. The cliché. The other woman. My knees nearly gave out. I stumbled back and gripped the edge of the dresser. "Who is she?" He hesitated. "It doesn't matter. This isn't about her." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "It's about me, right? You get to walk away from our marriage, our home, our plans because you're bored, because you want something shiny and new?" He didn't answer. He just stood there. Empty. Cold. My entire reality started to spin. The shared mornings, the late-night talks, the promises. We were supposed to be celebrating a decade together. Instead, I was watching my husband turn into a stranger in front of me. But beneath the heartbreak, something else stirred. A sharpness. A flame. I wasn't going to let this end with me sobbing in our bed while he rode off into the sunset with his affair partner. No, not this time. Because what he didn't know was that I wasn't the same naive woman who had married him 10 years ago. I had changed. I had grown. I knew how to play it smart. And while he thought he was walking out of our life scot-free, I was already planning my next move. He thought it was over. But it had only just begun. The morning after he left, I woke up to silence. The kind of silence that doesn't just echo through the house, but through your bones. His side of the bed was cold. Empty. A note lay on the kitchen counter, folded neatly, like a final insult. "I'll be staying at a hotel for a while. I'll come by next week to get the rest of my things. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." Harder? I wanted to scream, cry, throw something. But instead, I stared at that note like it was a declaration of war. How dare he? After everything we'd built, after everything I'd sacrificed, he thought he could just opt out like this was a bad subscription service? As the hours passed, grief morphed into something else. A bone-deep awareness that I had been played. It started clicking together. The late-night meetings he never used to have, the sudden obsession with fitness, the new cologne, the way he started locking his phone, facing it down on the nightstand, even taking it into the bathroom. I had asked him, "Is there someone else?" a few weeks before. He had laughed it off, pulled me in, kissed my forehead and said, "Don't be silly." Silly. I felt like a damn fool. But now I wasn't just humiliated. I was exposed. Vulnerable. Because the truth was, I had built my entire life around this man. I had scaled back my career for him. I'd trusted him with our finances. I had poured everything I had into keeping our marriage alive during its rough patches, all while he was planning his exit strategy behind my back. And the worst part? He was confident I wouldn't fight him, because I never had before. Because I had always been the understanding one, the peacemaker, the fixer. But I wasn't going to fix this. Not for him. By the end of that week, I started to realize the full scope of what he was doing. He had already opened a new bank account. The joint one we'd used for everything was suspiciously drained. Most of our savings moved or spent, leaving just enough behind to not raise a red flag until it was too late. Our financial advisor hadn't even notified me. Turns out I wasn't listed on some of the accounts anymore. This wasn't just a breakup. It was a betrayal with spreadsheets. He was trying to walk away with the money, the comfort, and the future we had planned together, while leaving me to pick up the emotional rubble. Friends started calling, confused. Wait, he left you? Before? Your trip? I saw him downtown. He didn't look like a guy who just ended a marriage. I thought you two were fine. You were just at our dinner party last month. That's when I realized he had already rewritten the story. To them, I'd probably be painted as the cold, distant wife, the one who just couldn't make him happy anymore. He was trying to control the narrative, set himself up as the wounded hero chasing a fresh start. And me? I was supposed to disappear. Fade quietly into the background while he played house, with someone new. But what he failed to understand was this. I don't disappear. I don't shrink. Not anymore. That trip I had planned for us, I still had the reservations, still had the itinerary. I even had the email threads where he'd gushed about how excited he was for it, just a few weeks ago. I began to wonder, was he lying then? Or did something change? And then, as I scrolled through my phone, something caught my eye. A message. Request from an unknown account on Instagram. It was a woman, a stranger, but her name felt familiar. I opened the message, heart pounding. I think we need to talk. It's about your husband. Or should I say, my boyfriend? I stared at the message for what felt like forever. I think we need to talk. It's about your husband, or should I say, my boyfriend? My fingers trembled as I clicked her profile. Public. Dozens of photos, selfies, brunch shots, and, buried between beach pics and gym mirror poses, there he was. My husband, wrapped around her waist, kissing her cheek, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. The timestamp sent my stomach into a tailspin. These weren't recent. Some dated back months. Our last anniversary, he had been with her. While I was lighting candles and making his favorite dinner, he was halfway across town playing doting boyfriend to someone who had no idea she was the other woman. Or did she? I replied cautiously. I'm his wife. Please tell me what you know. The woman, her name was Kira, responded quickly. She was young, mid-20s, and clearly shocked. She had met him at a networking mixer. He told her he was recently divorced, said he was starting fresh. He even wore a ring on a chain around his neck and claimed it was a reminder of a painful past. He had lied to her, just like he lied to me. Kira sent screenshots, dozens of messages, photos, receipts from restaurants I'd never heard of. Weekend trips he claimed were business conferences. He had told her he loved her, that he was building a future with her. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process it all. But more than anything, I felt violated. He hadn't just cheated on me emotionally or physically. He had weaponized my trust, used our shared life as a cover while he built a parallel existence. But here's what made it worse. Our finances weren't just joint, they were entangled. He had convinced me to consolidate some of my investments into a shared portfolio to make managing easier. But when I called our financial advisor and demanded a breakdown, I learned the truth. He'd liquidated assets I didn't even know were accessible without my sign-off. He was planning a clean escape, one that left me broke, betrayed, and alone. But I wasn't just anyone. I was his wife, legally, financially, strategically, and that gave me more leverage than he realized. I thought about all the ways this would impact my future. The house? We'd bought it together, but it was in his name. Stupid, I know. But at the time, I was trying to save us money on refinancing. My name was on the mortgage, but not the deed. The savings? Mostly gone. The business I had started part-time, the one he encouraged me to pursue, had been funded with what I thought were gifted contributions from him. Turns out, he had been funneling that support with the assumption he could claim partial ownership if it ever grew. I checked our operating agreement. Sure enough, he'd snuck in a clause last year giving him stake. It wasn't just emotional devastation, it was total life sabotage. He was trying to erase me. But the more I dug, the more I realized he had made one critical mistake: underestimating me. He thought I wouldn't notice the missing money until it was too late. He thought I'd be too heartbroken to act. He thought I would dissolve quietly, like so many women before me who had been conditioned to accept betrayal with grace. But I was done being graceful. I reached out to an attorney, someone sharp, highly recommended by a friend who had gone through a similar divorce. I compiled a folder with screenshots from Kira, financial statements, my notes on the conversations he'd had with me about gifting me money for the business, and proof of my role in running it. Because now, it wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about war. He had taken 10 years of my life and tried to trade them in like they meant nothing. But what he failed to realize was that this betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was tactical. And I was about to play his game better than he ever imagined. I didn't cry when I walked into the lawyer's office. I didn't fidget or break down. I sat tall, looked her in the eye, and said calmly, "He's trying to rob me blind. I want to make sure he regrets it." My attorney, Rachel, was exactly the kind of woman you want in your corner when you're preparing for war. Blunt, brilliant, and unbothered by drama. I laid everything out: the affair, the financial sabotage, the manipulation. When I showed her the screenshots from Kira, her lips pressed into a hard line. "You've got more leverage than you think," she said, flipping through the documents. "He's not just cheating, he's building a fraudulent narrative. That opens doors, financially, legally, and morally, if we decide to take this public." We mapped out our first move: freeze joint accounts. I filed for legal separation immediately, which locked down certain financial behaviors. I also filed an emergency petition for temporary control over the house and business assets, citing financial misconduct and potential dissipation of marital funds. Rachel made sure the motion sounded like thunder on paper. Next, I contacted a forensic accountant. Expensive? Yes. Worth it? Absolutely. Within days, we had a clearer picture of how much he'd moved and where it had gone. Offshore accounts, a separate business account opened in his name only, even a hidden payment to a property manager. Turns out he'd put down a deposit on a luxury condo for him and Kira. He wasn't just leaving. He was replacing me. But the plan wasn't just legal. I wanted him to feel it, to panic the way I had, to know what it was like to have the rug pulled from under you when you thought everything was under control. That's when I remembered the anniversary trip. The reservations were still active. I hadn't canceled a thing. I called the resort, pretending to be his assistant, and confirmed everything was still booked under our joint reservation. I added a note that the couple had a special announcement planned for the private dinner night. That little change would come in handy later. Then I reached out to Kira again. I told her everything about our marriage, the accounts, the lies, and the games. She was livid. Apparently, he told her they could go public with their relationship after the trip, because, conveniently, that's when the divorce would be finalized. Kira wasn't just angry, she was embarrassed, and when she asked me what she should do, I gave her one word: come. I invited her to the resort. I paid for her flight. I told her I wanted her to see the kind of man she was really dealing with. But more importantly, I wanted him to see what happens when you cross a woman who has nothing left to lose. While the legal battle was in motion and the trip was getting closer, I started planting seeds. I texted him casually, pretending to be heartbroken but resigned. I told him I wouldn't contest the separation, that I wanted space to heal, that I understood. Every message designed to lull him into a sense of safety. I even told him I'd go on the trip alone to find closure, and he bought it. 2 days before the flight, he texted me, "Maybe we can meet and talk after the trip. I think you deserve some answers." I stared at the message for a long time, then replied simply, "Looking forward to it." But I already knew the truth would find him long before I ever had to say a word. The stage was set. The players were in place. And for the first time in weeks, I felt powerful. Not spiteful. Not vindictive. Just clear. He thought he had won. But what he didn't know was that the storm was already coming, and I was the one bringing the thunder. The day of the trip arrived. I packed my bags like nothing was wrong. Same luggage, same perfume, same necklace he'd gifted me on our 5th anniversary. Only this time, I wasn't wearing it for him. The resort in Napa was exactly as I'd remembered from the brochure: vineyard views, private bungalows, candlelit dining. It was romantic, breathtaking, and the perfect setting for what was about to go down. He showed up the next day, just like I expected. I watched from the patio of my room as he stepped out of an Uber, looking relaxed and confident. He thought he'd bought himself a quiet goodbye tour, maybe even a chance to rewrite the story one last time. But I was already 10 steps ahead. What he didn't know was that Kira had arrived the night before. We'd spent hours going over the timeline, comparing stories, filling in the blanks. She'd been hesitant at first, afraid of the fallout, the exposure. But once she realized just how deeply he'd deceived both of us, her hesitation turned to fire. "He made me believe I was helping him heal," she said, voice shaking. "I thought I was saving him." I understood that ache too well. So we agreed. No screaming, no violence. Just truth. Exposed in the harshest light possible. That night, I walked into the private dinner the resort had prepared for our anniversary. He was already seated, a glass of wine in hand, a smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. "You look beautiful," he said, as if nothing had happened. "I wasn't sure you'd still come." I sat down, folded my hands, and met his gaze. Neither was I. He started talking like a man trying to patch drywall with wet tissue. Awkward apologies, vague regrets, attempts to justify his choices. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I was unhappy. You must have felt it too." I listened, in silence. Let him dig the hole deeper. And then I gave the signal. Kira entered the dining room exactly on cue. He froze. She walked slowly to the table, calm and poised, holding her phone in her hand. "Hi," she said sweetly. "Sorry I'm late. I think we're due for a little reunion, don't you?" His face drained of color, all that fake charm, the smug control, gone in an instant. He looked between us like a caged animal. "You two, wait, this isn't—" Cut him off. "It's exactly what it looks like." Kira placed her phone on the table, playing a voice recording. One of his drunken love confessions. Talking about the future, about how he was so glad he'd finally found someone who truly understood him. The date? 2 weeks before our anniversary. He tried to speak, but I stopped him. "I've already filed for legal separation. The accounts are frozen. The business assets? Under review. And by the way, our shared financial advisor? She's testifying." His hands clenched into fists. "You planned this?" I smiled. "No, you did. The day you lied to 2 women and thought we'd never find out." Kira stood beside me. "You're a fraud, James, and now everyone's going to see it." Because the final nail wasn't just this dinner. It was what came after. I had compiled every piece of evidence, financial records, screenshots, call logs, voice memos, and handed them to my lawyer, who filed a motion citing fraud and intentional dissipation of assets. Not only would he lose claim to most of what we built together, he'd also face an IRS audit, thanks to the shady offshore transfers. I also posted a carefully written blog, factual, direct, anonymous enough not to name him, but detailed enough, that anyone in our circle would know exactly who it was about. The response? Overwhelming. Friends who had believed his version of events reached out to apologize. Mutual contacts cut ties. He tried calling me 3 times that night. I didn't answer. The man who walked into that resort with a plan to begin, his new life walked out with nothing but a shaken ego and a growing list of consequences. And for the first time in years, I slept like a stone. Not because he was gone, but because I had finally made sure he couldn't come back. 2 weeks. After the dinner, I got an email. Subject, please talk to me. I didn't even have to open it to know what it said. But I did, just to savor the irony. "I made a mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. Please don't throw away everything we built. I'll give you back the accounts. I'll sign whatever you need. I just want another chance." I didn't respond. Because I'd already given him a chance. The first time I forgave the late nights, the broken promises, the way he withdrew whenever things got hard. I'd given him 100 chances over the years, and he spent every one of them digging the hole deeper. Now he was just reaping what he sowed. In the weeks that followed, the fallout spread like wildfire. His image, so carefully curated, shattered. His affair wasn't a scandal, it was a pattern. More than one woman reached out to me after reading the blog. Apparently, I wasn't the first wife he'd tried to ghost into submission, just the first one who fought back. The financial consequences were swift and unforgiving. Rachel filed for full financial restitution based on fraud, and the court agreed to freeze several of his personal accounts pending the investigation. The IRS began auditing him for undeclared assets and suspicious transfers. His once steady business started hemorrhaging clients thanks to the anonymous blog post that made its way into the hands of a few curious competitors. Even Kira took action. She filed her own claim against him for emotional damages, providing evidence that he'd used her identity to lease property and commit minor financial fraud. Turns out she was smarter and stronger than he ever expected. Funny how that works. As for me, I reclaimed my business completely. My lawyer helped me revise the operating agreement and sever all ties. I rebranded, went public with my story, on my own terms, and gained hundreds of new followers overnight. Clients came back, new ones joined. My inbox flooded with messages from women who said I gave them courage. I moved out of the house, our house, and into a smaller, sun-drenched space of my own. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I painted the walls the color he always said was too bright, filled it with plants he thought were too messy, and played music he hated every damn morning. And the trip? Well, I kept that memory. Not as a wound, but as a trophy. The dinner where he broke, not me. The moment he realized the woman he'd underestimated was the one holding all the cards. That's when he truly saw me. Not as his wife, his caretaker, his fallback, but as the storm he never saw coming. And if you ask me what I learned from it all, it's simple. Never beg someone to treat you right. Let them go, and watch what happens when they lose the best thing they ever had. Revenge didn't come from ruining his life. It came from rebuilding mine. Better, stronger, unapologetically mine. So when he begged for forgiveness, when he called me crying saying, "Please, I don't recognize myself anymore," I didn't answer. Because I did. I recognized him perfectly. He was the man who thought I'd never leave, the man who thought he could shatter me, and I'd quietly gather the pieces. But I didn't. I let those pieces burn. And from the ashes, I built something beautiful. He lost me the moment he lied. He just didn't know it yet. And now, I don't hate him. I don't miss him. I just hope, every time he pours a glass of wine or hears my name in someone else's success story, he remembers what he gave up. And I hope it haunts him. Because karma doesn't always come with thunder and flames. Sometimes it shows up quietly, with a smile on her face and a pen in her hand. And this time, I wrote the ending.